Hello everyone, it's Ali, and today I am doing an exciting video. It is a graduate school Q&A. So I know a lot of you have questions about graduate school, and that's the purpose of this video, for me to answer them. So I'm really excited. It's going to be a fun video. So I'm literally just sitting here in the floor of my dorm room, and I'm ready to answer these questions. So let's go. So the first question is, why did you decide to go to grad school? Well, I decided to go to grad school because my dream career requires it. So my dream career is a university researcher and professor, and so in order to do that, you need to have a PhD, especially in my field, which is biology. What was the grad school application process like? Well, the application process is very similar to the undergrad application process in the sense that you still have to fill out a form, take a standardized test, have letters of recommendation. So all of that is very similar. Um, but the thing that's slightly different is the recruitment. At least in biology, what most PhD programs will do is that if they like your application, they will invite you to the campus for an interview. So you get to interview with faculty members at that campus and tour the campus. And it's like a whole weekend event. I'll talk more about it later because there's another question about that. But yeah, so that's what I would say is different. Oh, another thing that's different is that, at least for my programs, they each had their own application portal. So unlike for undergrad, you just apply to a bunch of schools through the Common App. And I think in medical schools they have a similar system, but in my programs it was not like that. I had to apply to each school individually. So I made an Excel sheet to make sure that I had turned in everything to each individual school and that I didn't miss any deadlines, because even the deadlines were a little bit different. So just to make sure that I had all that straight. Okay, the next question appropriately is, what were the interviews/recruitment weekends like? So that's exactly what I was just talking about. And I definitely think that recruitment weekend is a better term for it than interview weekend, because at this point, the program has already shown interest in you because you've already submitted your application, the deadline has passed, and they're interested in you. They only extend interview opportunities to candidates that they are really interested in. So at that point, it's looking really good for you. They're trying to recruit you most of the time. So then what you do during this recruitment weekend is that you are flown out to the campus, and you get to interview with faculty members in the campus. You get to meet current graduate students, maybe over like dinner or lunch or something like that, so you can ask them questions about their experience, because one day that's going to be you. So you want to know what their life is like, because soon it's going to be your life. so that you do that, you get a chance to talk to other faculty members that you didn't necessarily interview with, which is great. And you get a campus tour, which is also really nice. Recruitment weekends are the perfect opportunity to ask current graduate students in that program if they're happy, if they like it, because some of them, I didn't experience this personally. When I asked this question, everywhere I interviewed at, everyone said they were happy. But sometimes they will literally tell you, like, no, I'm not happy. I've heard of people saying that. So yeah, it might help you narrow down your decision. The actual interview is not that bad at all. It was more like a conversation about research. So I just had like a standard like elevator speech about my undergraduate research, and the conversation would just flow from there. I didn't feel grilled at all in any of the interviews. Like, I'm at Yale, and in the Yale interview, it was actually a very pleasant conversation. I didn't feel like they were pressuring me. I learned a lot about the research that goes on here, and I'm sure the faculty members that I spoke with enjoyed hearing about my research back at home. Next question. Was the transition from undergrad to your PhD tough? In some ways, yes, and in some, no. Because I started my PhD straight out of undergrad. So it was good academically because I had not lost like my momentum for school. Like I was already used to balancing research, classes, homework, extracurricular activities. Like I was already used to that. However, a lot of my friends that come into their PhD having taken a gap year, they find it a little bit harder. At least they tell me they find it a little bit harder to like get the ball rolling for school again, because they haven't done schoolwork for a while. But for me, it was fine because I was still used to it. The part that was not so easy was in my personal life, like picking up and moving across the country to a totally different environment. That was what was the most difficult about my transition, just in my personal life, not in my academic or even in my research life. I was used to doing research, so I got the hang of lab work fairly quickly. Another question: what is the main difference between undergraduate and graduate school? Okay, well, I would say that in undergrad, the primary focus is definitely your schoolwork. Research comes second because you need to keep your GPA up and all that. So, yeah, schoolwork, homework is definitely the priority in undergrad. While in grad school, it kind of switches. Your research becomes your main priority and the main focus. Um, and of course, classes are definitely still very important, and you can't fail those at all. You have to give them the appropriate attention, but the focus is definitely research. So one thing that is different about lab work that I had to get used to is working much longer hours because it's like a full-time job. I'm in the lab from 9 to 5, except when I have classes. I'll go to my class, but on days when I don't have classes, I'm literally in lab from 9 to 5. It's a full-time job. Whereas in undergrad, I had even more classes and more extracurricular activities, so I didn't spend 40 hours a week in the lab. I was like a part-time lab assistant in undergrad. So that was another thing that I needed to get used to. Also, graduate school classes are less about regurgitating facts from a textbook that a professor repeated to you. Um, it's more like thinking about your own creative solutions to problems using the knowledge that you learned in undergrad. So even the classes are slightly different in graduate school. Ooh, this next question is about my program. Do you get to teach? So the answer to that is yes. In my program, we are required to teach for 2 semesters. I'm sorry about the ambulance sound. There's one right outside my window. Okay, back to the question. Now that the ambulance has passed, do you get to teach? So yes, we have to teach for 2 semesters. And the teaching can be as involved or as, not involved as you want it to be. You can TA for a huge freshman lecture class, where you actually have to show up to class and help answer students' questions and grade their papers and all that. So obviously that is much more involved. But you could also choose to TA a class that is not very involved at all, that you have not very much contact with students, that you just essentially are a grader and that's it. You can also choose to TA for classes that are more like that. But I personally really like teaching, so I'm looking forward to TAing for a class where I can help out the undergrads and answer their questions and just help them better understand biology. Okay, last question. What is your lab like? Well, I recently joined a lab, so I haven't had like that much time in it yet, so I'm not ready to talk about it just yet. But I do want to shed some light on the structure of my program, which explains why it's April and I only just joined a lab. Because the first year of graduate school is essentially, well, we call it lab rotations because you're rotating from one lab to another lab to another lab. So you get to work in 3 labs for 8 weeks each. So 8 weeks here, 8 weeks here, and 8 weeks there. So you get to work for 8 weeks in 3 labs. And so based on those 3 labs, you can choose one to be the lab that you're going to do your PhD dissertation research in. And so the rotation's just finished, and I have just chosen my lab. This was my first rotation lab, so I was working here from September to November-ish. Yeah, so that's the time that I was working there, and I'm still getting used to it again because obviously I've worked in the lab before, but I'm getting back into the groove of things because my last rotation was very different from the lab that I ended up choosing. Both were great though. All right, that is it for my graduate school Q&A. I hope you liked it. And yeah, for more graduate school or biology, college related videos, be sure to like and subscribe it. And I hope to see you again on my channel.